Good morning. Welcome to Body Talk, radio program on the No Stack Radio Network. I'm your host, Ayl Bridges. Today is Tuesday, the 25th of April, 2023. And again, you're listening to Body Talk on the WMDS No Stack Radio Network. I have some good news and some bad news. The good news is this is April, it's Minority Health Month, and I'm encouraging all black men and brown men and women to take better care of themselves. Keep your medical, dental, and behavioral health appointments. Maintain and keep your medications. And one thing I'm going to emphasize today is to please have your hearing checked. Go to an ENT, which is an ear, nose, and throat physician, and or an audiologist. Have your hearing checked. The bad news is Harry Belafonte, a black media pioneer and a long-term civil rights activist, passed away. He was 96 years old. To Mr. Brother Harry Belafonte, rest well in paradise. Today's segment, this morning at 11 o'clock, we have two great guests, but I have to give a short, brief commercial. This segment is being sponsored by O'Reilly Auto Parts. O'Reilly is looking for dedicated female and male team members for their retail stores, parts drivers, and their distribution centers across the country. A lot of people don't know O'Reilly is actually an international auto parts dealer. They have European locations, Mexico, and Puerto Rico, which is actually part of the United States territory. If you're interested, just go online, O'Reilly, that's OREILLY, auto.com, and apply for a position. Today at 11 o'clock, we have two wonderful ladies, keeping with the theme of Minority Health Month. We have with us, to my immediate right, is Miss Tammy Jones. And way over there in the corner, by the windows, is Miss Sheila Sullivan. They're here to discuss something that's very, very important, not only in the Cleveland, Ohio area, the greater Cleveland, Ohio area, but across the country. They're here to talk about maternal health. And more so, these two women represent an organization titled
Birthing Beautiful Communities.
Birthing Beautiful Communities. I always say it wrong. I'm not going to tell you what I say. I always call it Birthing Beautiful Babies, but it's actually Birthing Beautiful Communities. Let's get started this way. First off, give the audience a brief history of the organization.
Okay. So, Birthing Beautiful Communities was established about 9 years ago under Christian Farmer. Our current CEO is Jasmine Long. And this organization was established because babies were dying in Cleveland, specifically black babies. And we are here to change the narrative of making certain that our moms are able to have a pregnancy and a birth with dignity, and also make sure that they have their babies and they are alive. So we want to make sure that our moms and babies remain alive and healthy. So we are an agency of doulas. So doulas are birth workers who assist pregnant women throughout their pregnancy. So we're advocates for them. We assist them with medical appointments. We actually help them gain a voice for themselves when they go into their medical appointments, and making sure that their medical teams are listening to them. And we encourage moms to listen to their bodies and not to allow anyone, regardless of what letters you have behind your name, to tell you you don't feel or hear what is going on. If there's an issue, it should be addressed. If there's any concerns, we want to make sure that they are heard. So we're also teaching them to advocate for themselves.
Hey, listen to the Body Talk radio program on the No Static Radio Network. If you have any comments or questions, you can call area code 216-939-5087, or you can email them to bodytalkradioprogram@gmail.com. You mentioned a couple words, and the audience might not be familiar with them. Okay? And either one of you can chime in and answer. First off, what is maternal health?
Maternal health is the health of the pregnant woman during her pregnancy. We don't talk about the mother's health, but we should. Maternal is that mother. And what happens is a lot of times the mother's health gets lost in her pregnancy and in her delivery. So people don't understand the impact pregnancy has on a woman's body or on her basic health, nor do we understand the amount of stress and strain delivery actually has.
Just to help me and the audience, you hear the term maternal health and prenatal care. Are they synonymous? Or are they diametrically different? Or are they one and the same, close to the same?
That's a little harder to define because there are a very thin line between maternal and prenatal. Prenatal is basically what they are looking for is what's going on with the baby.
Okay.
Maternal is what's going on with the mother. You can't actually divide those two, although at some point they are very different if one of them are in trouble.
And this, we're going to go back and forth here. If I recall, it happened during the, I believe it was the Clinton administration, where women could actually select an OBGYN as their primary care physician, which I think was a good law. So if you participate in an indemnity plan or an HMO or whatever, managed care or managed care, depending on where you live, you as a woman, OBGYN. So you have this pregnant woman, right? How does she engage your organization?
There are several ways of engagement. She can call herself by finding the number on the website. Our website is birthingbeautiful.org. She could be referred by her doctor. She could be referred by a community health worker. She could be referred by a social worker. It's a matter of her getting her name to the organization, and the organization engaging with her.
Okay, and what's the phone number they can call?
Our number is 216-307-1538, and someone will connect you to our intake.
Okay, and please give the website again. And let me explain to the audience who listens every week. I don't give the phone number, and I will not give the website because I might transpose the numbers or get the website wrong. And some plumber or electrician is going to be receiving calls. So what's the website?
Our website is birthingbeautiful.org.
Okay. Now, Tammy mentioned a doula. Well, both of you did. And I have a question here from Terry, who is in Maryland. She wants to know the difference between a doula and a nurse practitioner or the midwife, the person who's catching.
Our doulas do not catch babies. We are non-medical personnel who are there as a support to you. We are your advocate. We are your physical, emotional support system team, a member, and we are there to help you through your pregnancy, your delivery, and postpartum. Your midwife, your nurse practitioner midwife actually delivers babies. They are providing medical care.
All right. Again, you use this fancy term, postpartum.
After birth.
After birth. So how long does the postpartum period last? 6 years? 14 years?
Postpartum with Birthing Beautiful, we carry our women till their baby's first birthday.
Okay.
We have a loss of mothers and babies before their baby's first birthday that no one talks about.
That's interesting. And if we can, we're just going to walk down the street for a minute. So we're talking about the infant mortality.
We are.
Okay. And a lot of people across the country don't understand infant mortality statistics last a year. If the baby's born on January 1st of 2023 and they survive till January 2nd, 2024, they're not counted as an infant mortality statistic. From my understanding, and I'm not holding you ladies to a percentage or stat or data, as some teachers like to call it, I understand that the infant mortality rate in Cleveland is abysmal. And will your program help address that?
Absolutely. Part of the infant mortality issue is that mothers don't know what's going on, and they take everyone else's opinion over their own feelings. We need to be addressed. We need to address the fact that they need an advocate, and they need to know what they're advocating for. If a mother is in pain, if she feels something is wrong during her pregnancy, and she goes to the emergency room and they say, "There's nothing wrong with you, go home," and she loses that child, then everybody says, well, she did something wrong. If she goes in and there's something wrong and she advocates for herself and she's there long enough for someone to notice something wrong, that pregnancy may be able to be saved. It's a matter of sometimes someone listening when there is a problem and addressing the problem. So part of what we do is help them to address those problems.
And let's talk generally for a minute. You have a pregnant woman in her first trimester. How long is the typical prenatal appointment? Is it 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 seconds? I know it can vary. I understand that. I think what I'm trying to convey to the audience here is that, and because you work primarily solely, if I recall, with minority women, right? Some of them are younger. Some of them are older, seasoned. Some of them are seasoned. I think what's important here, especially for the minority women to understand, they can speak. They should not have white coat syndrome fear. They can ask questions. They can say no.
Absolutely.
They should walk in with a notebook or a piece of paper with notes and say, well, this happened. I experienced this on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. What's going on? Can a doula accompany?
Yes, a doula can accompany them. And if their doula is with them and they have questions that have not been answered, that is when a doula should advocate for her client to say, could you please explain that in a way that she understands it? When you are pregnant, actually whenever you see any doctor, you should never leave their office without an understanding of what is going on with you, especially when you're pregnant. You should not leave confused. You should have those questions answered in order to be able to take care of yourself and your pregnancy to the best of your ability.
Let's talk about a little bit of bad news for a minute. It might not be Cleveland, we're just generalizing here. Women who expire during childbirth, what is that, 1 out of every 10, 1 out of every 100, or Tammy?
So Black women are 2 to 3 times rates are higher than our white Caucasian counterparts of having maternal mortality. So therefore, that's why we are so adamant in making sure that our moms get what they need. So the reason for we're dealing with this is toxic stress. We're living in an environment that we're dealing with racism, microaggressions, also institutional and environmental racism, retaliation, and trauma. So those are things that, as Black women, regardless of your socioeconomic status level, we're dealing with on a daily basis. So that affects our health, it affects our stress, it affects our ability to be able to process emotions, and it affects our mental stability. So therefore, we become pregnant. It's supposed to be a joyous occasion in our life, and it turns out to be not so joyous.
Like you mentioned some things, such as stress, and I'm going to say it, I'm not going to hold you to it. I think just being born Black, that's stress to begin with because of the racism and discrimination issues or variables. See, one of the things, and if either one of you know, is there for that maternal mortality, and we're talking about, again, you're working primarily black women in comparison to white women. She mentioned women, black women, or minorities are greater opportunity to pass away with their mortality. Is there also an issue between the poverty rates here? If I'm Mrs. Whoever and I'm
Unfortunately
black,
not.
it's not.
A highly educated black woman has a higher um, chance of dying than a white woman in poverty.
So I could just be black and well educated and just rich, whatever that means. And I'm still going to be a statistic in comparison to
Absolutely.
white women.
It has a lot to do with the way we're looked at regardless. There's a lot of myths out that people don't really want to deal with, like the fact that we can sustain more pain. And we cannot, but we're seen to be able to, or that the pain that we sustain is not as bad as we make it seem. We are not always seeking attention. We are not always seeking medication. What we are seeking is the truth, and we're seeking good medical care.
Okay, you're listening to the Body Talk Radio program. If you have any questions or comments, you can call area code 216-939-5087, or you can email them to bodytalkradioprogram@gmail.com. We have Tammy and Sheila from Birthing Beautiful Communities in Cleveland, Ohio. And we're talking about primarily the doula program that impacts the maternal health of your clients, again, black women. See, this is interesting. We speak of the mortality rate, and I don't want to say this is the last thing we're going to say because I'm like Columbo. I'll come back and bring something up again. Is it the physicians? Would it be different if this woman had a black female or male OB in front of her?
Not necessarily.
So across the U.S., we have approximately 6% of certified nurse practitioners who are black. So therefore, when we go into a medical office, we're highly unlikely to see someone that looks like us. So therefore, we are giving our lives, giving our whole physical being over to an individual who does not understand my culture, who does not understand some of my language that I use, who does not understand when I sit there and be silent, what my silence really means. Doesn't mean that I don't care about myself. It just means I'm taking in everything that you're saying to me, whether it be true or not. So I'm composing, my argument, my response to you, but it is mistaken for I'm dumb, I'm ignorant, I don't understand, I can't process or comprehend what is going on with me. So therefore, what we're educating our moms to do is to be able to speak up for themselves, to learn the medical terminology that is going to be spoken to them at their appointments. We encourage them to go in with a notebook and have your questions written down and not to leave your appointment until you are satisfied with what your next steps are and you're satisfied that the physician knows what is going on with you and you're able to take your care to the next level. It is just us fighting to be in the room and to be seen and heard and acknowledged as who we are. We're black women who are giving birth to lawyers, doctors, judges, presidents, to all of these great people in the world, and we need assistance to be able to do that in a dignified manner. And we also want appropriate access to care.
Now, it's obvious I'm not a female, okay? So,
I think. Okay.
I identify as a male, as a man. Does your program, I'm sure you have a combination of women, just not by age, but you have hybrids, whatever normal means. And if you can, or if you feel comfortable, let's just talk about Cleveland. Cleveland. Do you see more high risk women who are pregnant, or is the majority of them normal pregnancies? By high risk, that means she's hypertensive, she's diabetic, she might even be a substance abuser. Whatever determines high risk. What do you see in Cleveland?
So when a young lady comes to our program, we have certain requirements for that individual. So yes, they may come in with other chronic illnesses, and we have to address those. So we have programs to address these medical and emotional issues with our clients. So first, we have breathe classes, which are held on Wednesday evenings.
What type of class?
Breathe, we call it breathe.
Okay.
So we want you to actually breathe your stress away. It is a 5-part series where the women go through and they have training on stress, anxiety, depression, self-care, self-love. And then we do special topics in mental health, such as boundaries and navigating difficult relationships, grief and loss. So these are our foundational classes, and they teach women and give them the tools to be able to navigate in those spaces. We also find that some women may need some additional help, in the mental health care. So we also have a program called our Wellness Network, where we are connected with at least 35 other partners within the community who are either peer persons, clergy, or therapists, certified therapists, to get the woman additional help, them and their partner. So they may go through individual counseling or group counseling or grief workshops to deal with loss and grief that they've experienced. So we want to make sure that their mental is just as good as their physical. We also have classes on Tuesday and Thursday nights that deal with newborn essentials, postpartum issues, nutrition,
yoga. We have a support group. It's called Real Talk Tuesdays.
So we're dealing with the whole body.
So you do it from a holistic
standpoint, yes.
Now, I'm a novice researcher. So if we were to do a longitudinal study, do you see single mothers who have more stress versus women who come in who are married or in a committed relationship? Do their pregnancies go better? Do they function better in the program? You mentioned the different classes that a woman can attend. If I'm with Betty, can I attend these classes with her, or is it just strictly for the women?
So we are wrapping up our fatherhood program. So we have partnerships with other agencies within the community, making certain that we are also helping the dads deal with the issues, helping the dads learn how to be a support person for the pregnant mom, the birthing individual, and also for himself, because he's dealing with stress and anxiety. He's a first-time dad, or he didn't have a father figure growing up, or he doesn't know, how to rub her feet or how to rub her back and how to make her comfortable. So we're also, partnering up to teach the dads that. And do you have more stress versus less stress as a single mom versus a married mom? You have less stress when you have support. So therefore, you can be married and not have support.
This is true.
So we encourage our moms to look at their support system. Our support system is wide. That could be your mother, your father, one of your siblings, your best friend. We're definitely not leaving out the father of the child. And so the support system is wide, and we don't want to narrow it. We want to make sure that mom has everything and whomever she needs.
Okay. You listen to the Body Talk Radio program on the No Static Radio Network. If you have any comments or questions you would like to ask, you can dial area code 216-939-5087, or you can email them to the Body Talk Radio program at gmail.com. Let's start over. Women call. No, We're not starting over at 11 o'clock. Woman Cause. I've heard about your program.
What happens
Intake.
next?
Yeah. What happens next?
Okay, so she'll speak with Miss Verna, and she does an intake with her, and she gets all the pertinent information, and finds out who are you, how did you get referred, is this your first pregnancy, do you have other children at home, what is your status, are you employed, do you have support in that area, just finding out who she is as an individual. She is told about our classes. So then they go through orientation, new client orientation, and she's able to get started with classes right away. In the meantime, Ms. Verna is working with the perinatal support doula managers, Sheila and her counterpart, Jackie, to connect that client with a doula. And that doula, it makes contact with the client to let them know, hey, welcome to the BBC and welcome to our program, and this is what we're going to do for you and with you. And actually, we're not really doing for the client, we're empowering them to do for themselves. So this is, we're about to walk this road with you of pregnancy, your pregnancy journey, and this is the support we're able to offer you. And so the mom, she continues with life, but she gets hit with a curveball. The dad goes to jail. The dad walks out. She loses her child. The other children, maybe there's some issues with them, so they're like, okay, where do I go? I need some additional support. So she comes to her doula, like, hey, she needs some mental health support. She needs support with finances. She's about to lose her home. What can we do? So we go into our bank of, resources, and we walk with that mother throughout her issues, getting her to a place of stability, emotionally, mentally, and physically. Because again, she is pregnant, or she has just had her baby, and she's dealing with these issues, and we need to make certain that she can continue her duties as a mother.
Now you mentioned you use these fancy terms.
Okay.
No, you did. You did. Perinatal. What is that? Yes, you did. You sure did.
Perinatal.
Yes, you did.
Okay.
We're used to it.
I'm sorry.
No, that's.
Okay.
See, I don't know. I have to play like I don't know.
Okay.
What is that?
Okay. So, what was your term? Perinatal support doula manager. Did I say that right?
Yes.
So we are perinatal is through the pregnancy journey.
Okay.
So through the pregnancy.
All right. Now, what's the name of your organization?
Birthing Beautiful Communities.
And what's your website?
www.birthingbeautiful.org.
And how can I call to be into? It's actually called intake.
You can call 216-307-1538.
Okay. Now, we're far from finished.
I see.
Don't look at that clock. We're far from finished. See, one of the things that amazes me about Cleveland, there's so many other good, there are other programs, and I'm not taking anything away from the 3 hospital systems here, all right? There are programs such as yours that people, I'm not saying people don't know. The news needs to be spread far and wide because, as you both pointed out earlier, there's a mortality issue amongst minority, Black, pregnant women. And we also have the infant mortality issue in Cleveland that over the years is still trying to be addressed. And I'm not saying it hasn't come down. Okay? It probably has come down, but not to a significant margin in comparison to the white community. And organizations like yours help that. And people just don't know. That's why I try to have individuals such as you and other organizations, for or not for profit, come on and talk about what you do. And you'd be surprised that people say, I didn't know that existed. I receive emails and texts said, well, thanks for letting me know. So now, how can I donate to, what's your organization again?
Birthing Beautiful Communities.
Okay. Can I, first off, can I volunteer? Not a male, I'm more so a woman. How do women volunteer? What can they volunteer and do?
Okay. We don't quite have our volunteer program set up, so we are working on that right now. So hopefully soon we'll be able to expand with volunteerism. But there are a few ways you can volunteer. Like I said, we do have classes in the evenings, 3 nights a week. So you are an expert in a certain subject matter that we're looking for, so we can bring you on as a special guest.
Okay, and how do I donate? That's money.
Yes, money. We accept all monies. So you can go to our website, www.birthingbeautifuls.org, and there's a donate button. And so you can donate a one-time donation, a continuous monthly donation, annual donation. So we do accept donations.
Now I understand, and I don't want to say annually, I heard, your organization holds this gala.
Yes.
Okay. Can the community members purchase a ticket, or is it a private affair? I have to be invited?
It is invitation, so we will, sponsorship packages. So we will announce when it's time, getting close to our next gala, for the community to purchase tickets and be a part of that, that celebration. It's a celebration
Okay,
that we have, so, yes.
Now I understand I actually do research for this program.
Okay.
There's an announcement. You have this capital project. Okay, it's a fancy term for building something. You have this. What is the capital project?
Our capital project is a birthing center, and we are very excited. We should be breaking ground in 2024. It is in the Huff area where Birthing Beautiful Communities originated.
And how many birthing rooms, or if you know, I know, explain what a birthing center is. I don't know.
So our birthing center is actually it's a medical center actually, where we will actually have a space for women to actually deliver.
Okay.
They will be able to receive care and delivery in that space, in their community, by people who look like and care about them, which has not happened at this point.
Well, let's go back to this intake process. So you, Miss Verna, see, I remember that. She takes the information, gets everything about me. What if I don't live on a bus line, but I have an appointment across town? What happens? What can you do for that woman?
So we have a transportation program where we're actually Uber the mom to her medical appointments for herself and for her child. Also, we're Uber them to the grocery store.
Oh, that's good. So is the WIC program, I use the fancy term, is the WIC program still viable?
Yes, it is. It is not with us, but it is within our community. So we'll, if the mom is not set up on WIC, we will, assist them in getting set up, or how do you say that? Established, with that program.
If you can just give a brief overview of what WIC is.
WIC is a program that provides a mother additional support, food support, while she's pregnant and through the baby's first birthday.
I do believe so.
Yeah. So during her pregnancy, she's given meats, grains, protein,
Grains, cereal,
and milk,
cereal,
dairy, and she's also allotted formula once the baby comes. So it's a matter of making sure that she has food support for her child and during her pregnancy.
Now, after the baby's delivered, you might have mentioned this, I think you did. You give support to that family, that mother,
Yes.
because it's amazing. I can go to a store, maybe the adult man store better known as Home Depot, or Lowe's, and buy a refrigerator, a stove, a lawnmower, or whatever. And it comes with instructions. When you have children, there are no instructions.
No instructions.
So you give instructions
Yes.
to the mother. Because a lot of men and women, I'm gonna put the daddies back in this kid cries all night long. Well, welcome to parenthood.
Yes.
So you actually, or you tell the woman, she might even call you, I'm assuming. I can't get my baby to burp. And I'm not trying to make fun of women, okay? Or anybody who has a child for the first time.
Yeah, as a first-time parent, I remember being, you read all the books, you did all the things that you thought you were supposed to do. I was a nursing mother. Half of the book said babies who were nursed don't burp, and then the other book side said they did. And then you get an uncomfortable baby, and you don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very normal part of being a new mom. We do have support. We have postpartum doulas. So they are specifically for women who have already given birth that have gone through our program. Some of them come in as postpartum. But we give them instruction to say, try this technique. Sometimes it's over the phone. Sometimes it's video. Sometimes it's face to face. It depends on the situation and what is available at the time.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things that come up. They need breastfeeding support. Breastfeeding is a very hard thing to do on your own, especially if you have other things going on. So I can't get my baby to latch. Well, we have breastfeeding support, so that we have somebody that can help them with that.
Okay. Now you both mentioned you have these 9,000 community partners out here. I'm not going to ask you for their name. I'm presuming that at any time you can pick the phone up and the bat signal goes out and they show up, which is a good thing. And see, that goes back to what I mentioned earlier. See, a lot of people don't know what really goes on, and I'm gonna say in the trenches, the ground roots on the sidewalk in Cleveland. You as a doula, and let's back up. How does Mary, Janice, or whoever, and they want to be a doula? What do they call you, or is there a doula school?
We do have training for doulas.
Okay.
So we just had a training earlier this month. So our next training is, I do believe, scheduled for October this year. So you can go on our website. I'll give you that website address again. www.birthingbeautiful.org, and you will see on there, come work with us or something to that nature, or wanting to be a doula, and you can click on that, fill out an application that you want to work with BBC as a doula, and also get trained with us.
Now, does this woman have to have a medical background, or can she be a prior secretary, administrative assistant, not secretary of state, or whatever? Is it a full-time responsibility? Is it a part-time responsibility? Do you assign me 15 pregnant women, or can I just say I want one pregnant woman?
Okay, you're funny. So, they do not have to have a medical background. We provide all the training, and we're also expanding our training, making sure that the doulas are well-rounded and get some actual medical background training, such as vital stats trainings, so they'll be able to take this vital stats of the client when they go to visit them. Mental health training, they're also getting. So they're getting well-rounded training. So you just have to have a real desire and love to do birth work, to come and work with us. Our doulas are contractors, 1099 workers, and they are part-time.
Part-time.
Yes.
general, like, are they 22, 42, 62, 55?
Oh, they span the ages from, you know, have to be 18. So I think probably our youngest doula is in her early 20s, and it goes up to, I'm gonna say, mid 60s. So we have doulas across the ages, across all types of backgrounds and experiences. A lot of them are mothers or grandmothers, and then we have several who are without child.
Now, as a client, can I interview the doulas, or do you just say, you get married?
Okay, so you are assigned a doula.
Okay.
We do understand that everybody does not necessarily mesh, and that's okay. If you and your doula decide that this is not a good fit, we will give you another doula. Sometimes when you are interviewed, the process in which you were interviewed, how you projected who you were may be a little different. So you're kind of connected with what we hear from you. And you may project that I don't need much support, this is what I need, and so that's what we give you. And then we get you and we say, oh, wait a minute, they need a lot of support. But that's not the doula we gave you because that's not what you said. So now we need to give you someone who will give you a little bit different kind of support.
Okay, so I'm just using names.
And so we can reassign.
Oh, nobody's name Mary. So Mary might come to see this particular client once a month, twice a month. Does it vary based upon what the client requires, or how does this work?
We require that you make contact with your client once a week, especially in the beginning, because one, you need to establish a relationship. Now, you may have a client that says, listen, I really don't need once a week support. That is something you're going to work out with your client. Clients may have a different way of wanting to be contacted. You may have a client that says, listen, week 1 and 3, can we text? Week 2 and 4, can we FaceTime? And then maybe, or in week 4, can we go out to lunch? Can we meet in person? You need to make up and set up those things specifically with that client. Every client is as individual as every pregnancy.
Okay, you're listening to the Body Talk radio program on the No Static Radio Network. If any calls, questions, or comments, you can call area code 216-939-5087, or you can email the questions or comments to bodytalkradioprogram@gmail.com. Let's make a quantum leap down the highway, not physical highway, down the highway here. You get a call. I'm on my way to the hospital. The water has broken. This is at 1:30 in the morning. Does the doula say, okay, see you tomorrow morning? Or does she? She's on her way. So the doula goes into the delivery room.
Yes.
With the mom.
And possibly the father.
And
possibly the grandmother. The doula is not part of their family support.
Mm-hmm.
They are a part of their non-medical team support.
Okay. So they're standing at the head of the bed, not at the foot of the bed. The doctor or nurse practitioner, they cannot say, I want everybody out, because it's up to the patient who she wants in that room.
Yes.
Okay. So all of the hospital systems understand that. Or we're working
Yes.
on the perfect radio network, okay. So just another question here. Do you just do Cleveland?
We are Cuyahoga County and Summit County.
Summit County being the Akron area. Just in comparison, do you have more clients in Cleveland or Summit, Cuyahoga County?
In Cleveland.
In Cleveland, okay. Is the risk threshold of the patients higher in Cuyahoga County versus Summit County, or are they about the same?
They're about the same.
About the same. Okay. Again, just another question. The clients, are you seeing more teenagers or people, women, I should say women who are teenagers up to, let's say, 28? Is that your biggest number? Are you saying women in their 40s or 30s?
Um, the majority of our clients are between their 20s and their 30s. Do we see teenagers? Yes, we do. Are we going to see more teenagers? I do believe we will.
Because of the pandemic, probably. I'm just guessing.
The pandemic uh, and other actions that are taking place in the state of Ohio.
Okay. We'll come back to that question or statement. Share with the audience. We'll go with Sheila first because you used up your oxygen.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in birthing beautiful communities.
I became involved with Birthing Beautiful Communities because in the beginning I was doing classes. I am a sexual education professional who've always been interested in birth advocacy. I've always been involved in birth advocacy. I don't think I'm different than a lot of people who go into birth work. I had a not very happy birth experience and no one listened. And I screamed it for years that, hey, we're dying out here. And people were like, having a baby is nothing. And I was thinking, it may have been nothing for you, but it almost took me out. And no one was talking about it. And babies were dying, and I was screaming at the top of my lungs, and there was no place to go at that time. And then one day, Birthing Beautiful showed up, and they said, hey, we have an opportunity. Would you like to do a class for us? And I was like, I'd love to. And then they had an opportunity for a position. I applied. I was very blessed to be able to get the job. And I am excited to be here. I believe that everyone has a reason. My why is I need women to be safe when they give birth. I want them to have a voice when they give birth. And anything that I can do that's going to make that a better situation, I'm willing to do.
Tammy, give us your.
I have a over 20-year career in public health, so I'm experienced in working with individuals who of various social and economic backgrounds, and really dealing with the whole person, the individual. They come to me with issues, and I sit there and I produce programs and projects to be able to help solve them. So I left my career in public health about 3 years ago, and I took a year off, and it was just really just to rest and breathe and relax and try to figure out, what I wanted to do with the second half of my life. And I interviewed for this position at Birthing Beautiful Communities as I'm Senior Director of Programs and Behavior Health now. And I honestly didn't think I was really qualified for the position. And I was like, I'll give it a chance. And this has been, I think it's been almost 2.5 years, the best 2.5 years of my career. I enjoy helping people. I enjoy helping them realize that their self-worth and really getting on the road of healing. So that is my main role, at the agency is working with the behavior health, the emotions of not only our clients, but also our admin staff, and making sure that they are whole and they're in a position to help individuals, the clients. We need to make sure that we gain and we experience self-care, and we are mentally well and holistically well. So I really push behavioral health within our organization. And we get all kinds of calls. We get crisis calls, and the mom is in crisis. And at that point, she needs someone to listen to her. I am that individual, and she wants to know how do I make a way, for myself. I can't do this. Maybe I want to leave my baby. Maybe I don't feel my life is worth, living anymore. So that 1 hour crisis call either makes or break that individual. So I get great joy in being able to help her and listen to her and be able to say, here's some strategies in which we can work together with to make sure that you're not only a mother, but you're the best person for yourself. So that's what I do. I make sure that our moms, our admin team, they're the best individuals for themselves before they can go out and help someone else.
But I'm going to ask a question that's associated, and you don't have to answer for birthing beautiful communities. Yeah. See, one of the things I've noticed, and I know, full disclosure, I know both of you, okay, I highly respect both of you, and more so the work that you're doing. See, one thing, again, going back, let's say 15, 16 minutes, there's no one directory that I can pick up to give me those wraparound services. And that's a shame. And I was born in Cleveland. I was reared in Cleveland. And 9 times out of 10, I'll be buried somewhere. Okay. Why is it that we have this city and these so-called, I don't like the term elected officials because that makes them better than what they are. You have these elected people who don't do this. There should be a directory that I can pick up, or somebody's passing out like they used to give the phone books in the city. Where is that? This woman has to be pregnant, and I understand she's in crisis, or she could be in crisis. The family, they have to come to you to get the phone numbers, and if that's okay. At least you have them.
Wait a minute, you have to get it.
But we're missing something here. Not you two, not birthing beautiful communities. You're doing what you're supposed to do. We're not taking care of our community. And Cleveland has this moniker, the healthcare capital of the world. I'm not taking anything away from Cleveland Clinic, University Hospital, or Metro. We're not taking care of each other.
You're so very right in saying that.
Thank you.
But at BBC, we do our best to make sure we're integrated into these institutions that we're working with. So we work very closely with the labor and delivery departments and also other departments in the hospital systems of Cleveland Clinic, Metro Health, and University Hospitals, and also the managed care systems within the community. We do have partnerships with them. We do have a partnership with Cuyahoga County Board of Health and with the Adams Board. We do have a partnership with Village of Healing, which is a partner organization of ours, and Pregnant with Possibilities Resource Center. We have partnerships with these organizations. We try to uplift each other. So, and we do have partnerships with government officials, City of Cleveland, State of Ohio, and we're expanding. So what we're doing is making sure we're getting the word out about BBC and what we're offering, and making sure that our clients are getting exceptional care. We are very unique in what we do. No one does what Birthing Beautiful Communities does, and we enjoy having that piece of the pie for us. But we are making sure also that people in the community can come to us. So we're doing things such as providing incentives for our clients. Getting word of mouth, helping them get the word out about us. When you're doing what you do and you do it well, we may have some people who are maybe a little bit afraid of us, but we're still going to do what we do. We are an organization of Black women who are helping Black women. So we are out here doing this job, and we are very proud in what we do, and we take ownership of what we do, and we want to make sure that the greater community of Cleveland Cuyahoga County, Summit County, the state of Ohio, and the United States of America know who Birthing Beautiful is. We're a Black woman helping Black women live for themselves and their children.
That's because you're listening to the Body Talk radio program on the No Static Radio Network. And you just gave me permission to say,
Oh my goodness.
no, this is good. I can say BBC now, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
I was. We weren't going to do the political thing, and I'm really proud of what BBC does, and it's good that you, both of you, emphasize that it is a Black run and, for lack of better terms, owned
Yes, it is.
entity.
Yes.
You're one of the few Black owned entities, healthcare related, in Cuyahoga County. Definitely the city of Cleveland.
Yes.
Right? And most definitely in Summit County. It's good. I heard you mention that you have relationships with the managed care, some companies, you don't have to mention them. I can imagine one of them is Care Somebody. I can't say Care Source because they can pay for a commercial. So, and that's good because, see, one of the things that I was just in a discussion 2 or 3 days ago with a couple individuals, and they didn't even know how their insurance program worked. They had no clue. And the other thing that I'm stressing for the rest of this year is not only Black History Year, I'm putting the churches on notice. The churches should have a health ministry. They should be encouraging the male and female and whatever gender, how you identify, to take care of themselves. You're paying $2,000 a year and you don't go to the doctor. Now, I like what you said, both of you said earlier, more so Tammy, you mentioned, well, go in with a notebook, write your questions down, be sure you get your questions answered. And when I used to teach, I would tell my students, you stand up against the door, I don't care if you're butt naked, and don't let that physician out that room until he or she, or the nurse practitioner, answers your questions.
Totally agree.
Okay? And it's important. The birth rate, and I don't know if you two have looked, actually the birth rate for the Black population in Ohio has crept up a little. The white birth rate is going down. And we're not going to get into the abortion discussion. I have to come back for that later. Okay? See, one of the things that's important now is the birth rate's up, but our infant mortality rate is exceeding the birth rate.
Yes.
Now, somebody, I'm not going to tell you his name, said, well, there's a zero birth rate in Cleveland. No, it's not. It's not. We just need to learn, and you're doing this with women and men, families, how to take care of yourself during pregnancy. You're giving postpartum care. See, I learned something.
Oh.
Yeah. And that's good. Now, I'm a dad, and I'll share this. When my daughter was born, I went to all her prenatal appointments. I enjoyed it. Okay. I was there when she was born. I took her. We all went to her first appointment, and the nurse practitioner said, "Are you satisfied with her?" And my wife looked at me. She said, "It's not going to be pretty." What was I supposed to do? Say no? We're going to send her back? Now I let her know, called the doctor in. I said, when we come back for her follow-up appointments, we're not going to see her. We don't want her here.
That's that cultural racism I was talking about earlier.
Well, and see, my daughter, use a bad term, she hustled people when she was in college. My daughter was born in North Dakota. So, and we were an anomaly in North Dakota at that time. But yeah, the racism. And see, one of the things that I also advocate with young children we need to start recruiting them to become medical professionals. Not everybody's going to be a doctor or a dentist. Some people become lab techs from biologists, try to say that real fast, or whatever, or researchers.
Mhm.
That's what we can do. And that comfort level, regardless of the white coat, might be there. I'd like to thank both you, Tammy, and Sheila for being guests here. And you represented Birthing Beautiful Communities, better known as BBC if you're trying to say it quick. And what's the website?
www.birthingbeautiful.org.
And your phone number?
216-307-1538.
And again, I thank both of you for being wonderful guests and sharing that information. Thank you again.
Thank
We'll be
you.
back in 360-minute or second break, and we'll be right back. All right, thank you.
Easier than you thought. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You did good. What you worried about? It's so
Good afternoon and good day to everyone. I just want to take a moment to talk about the trauma recovery centers. So, if you, a family member or a friend, have been affected by violence, know that violence can affect your life in all types of ways. Violence can affect the way you eat, sleep. It causes you to lose focus, feel angry, afraid, or even use drugs or drinking as a way to escape. And we're here to tell you that violence does not have to keep hurting, and you can change your life starting now with help from the Trauma Recovery Center. We want you to take control of your life because today can be the day. The Trauma Recovery Center offers real help for real needs in real time. They offer services for food, clothes, safety, emotional support, and a whole lot more. So do not let violence control you. You can break free, and TRC can help. If you're listening, and the number's on the screen, if you're watching, 216-644-5487. They will come to you wherever you are. They can give you the tools to rebuild your life and your health. Again, they can give you the tools to rebuild your life and your health. Call today. They're free, they're 24/7, and they're confidential. So, look, if you want out and don't know where to start, call the Trauma Recovery Center. The Trauma Recovery Center will help you take back your life after violence started today. Call today. Get the help you need today. I guarantee you, when you call them, they'll respond immediately within minutes. And I'm not talking 10 either. Again, the Trauma Recovery Center, 216-644-5487. The Trauma Recovery Center of Northeast Ohio, also affiliated with the Center for Families and Children.
turn this off.
Thank you. Welcome back to the Body Talk radio program on the No Static Radio Network. Again, my name is Ayl Bridges, and we have an excellent second guest in our noon hour. I'll introduce her in just a moment. Just real quick, I want to remind you this is Minority Health Month, and the Metro Health System is sponsoring a Minority Men's Health Fair. It is on April the 27th, which is Thursday, beginning at 5 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. to pre-register if you desire to do that. Just call area code 216-957-3862. The health fair is at all three centers. It's at main campus, it's at the Metro Broadway Center, and at the Cleveland Heights Medical Center. It's important. It's free health screenings. I'm encouraging all Black men and men of color to go get screened. Let me introduce our second guest. Our second guest is Dr. Williams. I'm going to give her her props because she earned them and worked hard for them. I understand that. And maybe along the way she'll let me call her by her first name periodically. And Dr. Williams is from the Western Reserve Historical Society. And I have to be quite candid with you. I met Dr. Williams, let's say maybe two, 3 weeks ago at the most. And she was actually the lead researcher who put a program together for one of the oldest Black churches in Cleveland. And first off, Dr. Williams, thank you for joining Body Talk.
Well, thank you so much for this invitation. This is a first, with the headset and all of that, and it sounds great.
Well, hey, you sound and look great as usual. First off, share with the audience what the society, I'm abbreviated, what the society is.
Yes, the Western Reserve Historical Society is one of the oldest cultural institutions here in the city of Cleveland. Its history dates back to 1867. I have the pleasure of working at what we consider to be the headquarters, and that's at 10825 East Boulevard, right in University Circle, the Cleveland History Center. But we also have properties in other areas of Northeast Ohio, including in Bedford, and also at the Hale Farm and Village, which is actually in Bath, Ohio, a little bit closer to Akron than it is to Cleveland.
Okay, now, is it a museum that a person can actually come walk through?
Oh, absolutely. We are open right now because, like many institutions, we have not yet returned to our pre-COVID schedule, but the doors are open to the public Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So you can make it a long and really amazing weekend. If you make your way, for example, to the Cleveland History Center, you'll have access to the Crawford Auto Aviation Museum, major exhibits like Cleveland Starts Here, the Research Library, the Costume Wing. There's art displayed all over the museum, so I think it's a great place to be in the world.
Now, explain to the audience what your role is at the Society.
My title is Distinguished Scholar of African American History and Culture, and I tell everybody I'm a historian for life. When you spend that much time in grad school, you want to put the degree to good use. And I've been trying very hard to do that since I graduated in 2001. But I'm an alumna of Case Western Reserve University's Department of History. That's where I earned my doctorate in 2001. But also spent a lot of time at Cleveland State University.
Now, I'm gonna say this for myself.
Okay.
And we're in Cleveland, Ohio. We listen to the Body Talk radio program on No Static Radio Network. You're one of the best kept secrets in Cleveland.
Oh my.
No, you are. And I'm not going to steal your thunder. I'm not. When I went to this particular program that you were leading, I said, you're the lead on a program for what church?
That was the East Mount Zion Baptist Church, right at East 100th Street and Euclid Avenue.
Okay, and please share with the audience the history of share with the audience why you were there.
Sure. The church has a rich history. It was established in 1908, so more than 100 years ago. But right there in the Fairfax community, various addresses for many productive years on Cedar Avenue and East 103rd. But since 1955, the Greenstone Church, really a landmark institution, right there on Millionaires Row, at 9990 Euclid Avenue, actually. But when you get to the street that used to be East 100, that's the Reverend Dr. A. Charles Bowie Way, because he was the pastor of the church for more than 40 years. The current pastor is the Reverend Dr. Brian A. Cash, who is quite amazing, a really visionary leader. I don't think he would mind me saying he's a young, dynamic, fast-moving, forward-thinking kind of pastor. And he has really outlined a great, what I think, a plan for growing, diversifying the church in many ways. Culturally, certainly, intergenerational. I think he was all of 29 when he became the pastor of that church. But age, it seems to me, is just a number. I wasn't familiar with his work, but I had always heard so much about East Mount Zion. I was so impressed by what they did in building the education wing, which still bears the name of the Reverend Dr. A. Charles Bowie, and the great work that they've done in the community in opening up that space for special events in University Circle. We have a history in this city as neighborhoods change, when other groups have moved out, and usually those were European American groups when they moved out to the inner ring suburbs and then to the far-flung suburbs, east and west. Very often, Black people who were migrating to Northeast Ohio inherited that ground and those communities, and they purchased those faith communities, even if they were of different faiths. So Glenville, for example, was a Jewish community for many decades, but then things started to change, especially around the middle of the 20th century. And in the middle of that great Black migration, there were lots of African Americans who made their home on the east side of Cleveland, especially along East 105th Street. So it is now a predominantly African American community, and I call East 105th Street, where there were so many religious institutions and cultural institutions for Jewish community members, I call that Church Row. Right. Yeah, that's where we find the Greater Abyssinia Baptist Church in Bethany and so many others that you know. Yeah.
Let's go back to East Mount Zion Baptist Church for a minute. See, and it struck me. I'm a native Clevelander.
Okay.
And what struck me about that Saturday was the history. And I mentioned while you were here prior to arriving, this is Minority Health Month. Not only do we have a physical, mental health, we also have an intellectual health that we need to maintain and more so develop. East Mount Zion Baptist Church was the first Black church on Euclid Avenue. And share with the audience how that came about.
Certainly, when we study the history, one very important red letter date, in addition to the 1908 founding, is in 1955, in the late fall of that year, East Mount Zion made that historic move from East 103rd and Cedar to approximately 100 in Euclid Avenue. And again, they have that claim to fame.
Excuse me, caller. What's your name and what city are you calling from, please?
Good afternoon. This is Roland calling from University Heights.
Hi, Roland. How are you? What's your question, please, sir?
Once again, great show. Always great listening. Always learn something. Listen to your guest. I was so glad to hear what you just said about the Glenville area because I taught at one time in the Cleveland Public School System, and I substitute taught for a period of time at one of the junior high schools in the Glenville area. And I was surprised to discover in looking at some of the pictures of previous classes from that junior high school back in the late 30s and 40s white, and I looked at the names, and they were Jewish names. So what you said is correct, that area was exactly like that. And as you said, it really didn't switch over to the 50s and 60s. I'm going to ask you a question, and I'll hang up and listen. When did the great changeover take place in Cleveland as far as integration of neighborhoods? Because that, during the 20s and 30s, primarily blacks lived in the near downtown area and what we now call that area. But now, there was a time when they ventured out into Glenville, Lee Harvard, and others. So I will hang up and listen. As always, Al, great show. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron, for your question. Dr. Williams?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question when you think about the geography of Black history in the city of Cleveland. And I agree with your caller that there were a lot of people, working class people, who were concentrated in the heart or the core of the city of Cleveland. And some of them a little west of East 55th Street. So when I talk about East 105th being a major thoroughfare sort of across town, I also have to think about East 55th, especially around Woodland. A very diverse area, as the caller suggested also. But again, initially, when blacks were clearly in the minority in this city in the first half of the 20th century, there were significant numbers in and around that area. And I'm drawing pictures in the air. And I know the caller can't see this, but there's a map. We're talking about the geography of Black history in Cleveland. So if you think about Central High School, it was one of those major educational institutions in the city of Cleveland. And in the early 1920s, we had people like Langston Hughes graduating from Central High School, the top of his class, but in a very diverse learning environment. Black people were in the minority in Central, but there's a growing Black population because he's graduating after that first wave of the great migration to the city of Cleveland.
Marie, you have a question?
Yes, if you don't mind me, I just wanted to comment on the Woodland area. Like, my grandfather lived at 4708 East 47th over there off of Woodland. And my grandmother and him were students over at Central. Yeah, so, we sharing a lot of history. My grandfather's James Thompson. He was, a Cleveland police officer and detective here for the city of Cleveland, part of the African American Hall of Fame and stuff. So, yeah, when you speak of Woodland and the history and everything, including the cemetery that's over there, because I got, two great grandparents that are over there and great great grandparents. So it's a lot of rich history over there. Yeah, residential and educational wise. DePaul, if I'm not mistaken, was also over there at one time. So yeah, a lot of good rich history over there.
Yeah, well, thank you for chiming in. Sometimes I've discovered that history is a tough sell, especially local history.
Yeah, definitely.
Because maybe you've heard the statement, "It's nothing happening in Cleveland."
Right.
I'm going to Atlanta. Okay,
right.
Well, come back and visit occasionally. I think there's a lot that's been happening in Cleveland for a very long time.
Yes.
So thank you for sharing those chapters from your family's history.
Thank you.
And also about the cemetery. And the history that's recorded there.
Yeah.
For that one in particular, Black Civil War veterans buried in that cemetery. So very important, I think, landmarks, if you will, when we talk about the institutions where our history is not buried, but is very much alive.
Yes.
If you know the names and you know who you're looking for in that cemetery, I think you can learn a lot.
A lot, yeah.
So again, talking about the major streets, if I say Quincy, also say Central, if we're going to say Cedar.
See, interesting, we'll go back to 1955. I'm a baby boomer, and both my parents are graduates of Central High School. And most of their friends were graduates of Central High School. And they lived in the 80th Street area. And most of the individuals moved from 80th Street to Mount Pleasant, then into the southeast part of Cleveland, better known as Lee Harvard. But back to 1955. So the church was acquired. And how was the church acquired?
Well, it's my understanding that the Reverend Dr. William Downs, who had been pastor since 1939, had negotiated with the behind the scenes, under the table, behind closed doors perhaps, wasn't public information, negotiated with the pastor of the Euclid Avenue Christian Church. The congregation had actually built the Greenstone Church there at 100 in Euclid. And East Mount Zion had really outgrown its home on Cedar Avenue. And I understand from one of the narrators from our oral history project that the church was so large, I get in to be part of the worship service. And so they needed a larger home. But they didn't necessarily want to leave Fairfax. And so they saw that space and witnessed the changes in the neighborhood with the population and the influx of Black people who were looking for church homes. And so he approached the pastor about possibly moving to that space if they were desirous of moving on, and they were.
And I don't want to take your words. I know what attribution is. The church was priced at what?
I believe, and that's one of the primary documents that's in the archives there. I believe it was priced at $125,000.
$125, and that was a lot of money back in 1955.
Mm-hmm.
Share with the audience how much Reverend Downs and congregation had to put down to purchase the church.
They put down $100,000 cash.
Okay.
Wow.
In 1955.
Yes, they did.
And that's a story in itself, but we'll reserve that to the members at East Mount Zion.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about it, that church did something that wasn't taking place in Cleveland. They beat the red line.
This is true. Yeah, and it's interesting now to go back and focus on that because it's real estate and banking and there's all kinds of hands who's stirring in that pot that made redlining a reality for Black families especially, and also for Black churches and Black businesses.
Right.
But again, I like to look at the photographs of Reverend Downs as well. He was very fair. And I'm not sure,
They knew
that he was a Black man initially, and because he never tried to pass based on anything that I've seen. And certainly his wife at the time, Mrs. Marion Downs, was a very dark-skinned Black woman. And the congregation was clearly African American. I mean, it's right down the way. All they had to do is look over at Cedar and 103rd, and they would know who was worshiping there. But I understand the whole process took about 2 years. So yes, they did beat the odds.
They beat the odds.
Yes.
And what makes the story even more compelling, this was a white church who did not have to sell their building to a Black congregation. And even more so, I don't know if it was the bank or the church who said, well, I know how we'll get out of this. We'll ask them for at least 90% of the selling price, and they won't have it. And excuse me, I'm Black too. These Black folks came up and said, here's the $100,000, and they mortgaged $25,000.
And paid it off in just a few years too.
Paid it off.
Yeah. And again, the other thing that makes it so interesting, as I'm sure you know, it's right at the beginning of the modern civil rights movement, where there is this push, and it's church-based, and primarily in the South, as you know, led by Dr. King, who was quite the radical young Baptist preacher himself in the 1950s, and all of 26 years old when East Mount Zion is making their move. But he's starting, or is at the forefront of, he didn't start it by himself, the Montgomery bus boycott. So all of these things are going on in the South. But in the North, there's a movement as well. Maybe it's a quiet movement and a gradual, maybe a slow-moving kind of forward progression. But again, there is progress being made. And it's not that East Mount Zion was given anything. That's a whole lot of offerings and a whole lot of tithes, that add up to $100,000.
And you're the historian And for the audience, when did the so-called Great Migration of the black folks from the South push to the North for the jobs, the steel mills, the auto plants, and whatever?
Yeah, so we talk about two major waves in the Great Black Migration. In the first half, they peak during the global wars, well, the Great War, World War I, and again, supposedly that's over by 1919 with the Treaty of Versailles, but also World War II in the 1940s, and that's what's lifting the country out of the Great Depression. But 1941, with the bombing of Pearl Harbor, sort of signals the official U.S. involvement in the war effort, at least the hostilities of the war. We had been supporting our allies in other parts of the world. And then that war ends, as most wars do, very violently, right?
Atomic bomb.
Yeah, the first use of the atomic bomb in world military history, the only use, with two targets in Japan.
Correct.
Being bombed in 1945, and that ends the war in the Pacific, and the surrender by the Japanese forces comes soon after that.
No, it's interesting. I'm a former military officer in the Navy. It's interesting that a lot of people don't know that two atomic bombs were dropped. Because when the first one was dropped, Truman had really hoped that the Japanese would say, we surrender, we quit, it's over. And one of the efforts that during the treaty, he wanted an unconditional surrender, and they declined to do that, so the second bomb was dropped in Japan. You're the historian, and we're somewhat finished with these Mount Zion here. Are you a native Clevelander?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And when I was talking with you that Saturday, what struck me is, one, you're a historian, and you don't see that many black historians anymore. Because even when I was in college taking black history, African American history, I only had one teacher, Dr. Goggins, who's gone on now. But every other teacher I had was white. And it struck me, I said, well, how's this white guy teaching black history? Okay. And you're an anomaly. Not only, and there's many of us who have doctorates, okay, but you're an anomaly because you have your doctorate in history. And you're from that very, very rich school. I don't mean it money-wise. You're a graduate of Case. Now, where did you get your master's?
Well, I grew up on the campus of Cleveland State University. I went directly to CSU when I graduated from high school in 1977, where my older sister, Lana, was a student in the College of Education. She's a great educator, still teaching now, on her own terms, not full-time, but doing great things, in a more flexible environment, mostly in after-school programs and in our family church that my parents were co-founding members of in 1959 on Central.
And which church?
That's the New Joshua Missionary Baptist Church. And so my sister's very active in music ministry there. But again, she's at Cleveland State. The young man I was engaged to be married to, became my first husband, he was at Cleveland State, and so I thought I needed to be there because I had been accepted in Case, but you're required to live on campus if you're a freshman in Case. And I was engaged to be married, and he had me in so much debt with this financial aid package that I just couldn't see myself moving into a dorm, leaving my future husband somewhere else to fend for himself. And so it was just an interesting time to be 18, right? But I found an academic home at Cleveland State and eventually got to Case, but took the scenic route,
Well, both from excellent institutions,
yes.
They really are. Now, see, you mentioned you graduated from high school in 1977.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say this is going to surprise the listeners here, especially if you're from the greater Cleveland area and possibly nationally, internationally, share with everybody the high school you graduated from.
I graduated from Hawken Upper School in Chesterland, Ohio.
So you were at the FAR campus. Now, what makes your graduation, or more so your attendance, but graduation, you were in the first class of women who graduated from Hawkins.
Yeah, went there in the 70s.
Now, what was that like?
Oh, it was like a half century ago, right? And now they want to interview me. The first. So It was high school. And I had always gone to co-ed schools through the ninth grade. So I entered Hawken Upper School in the 10th grade. And, there were ninth graders who came as well, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, all right there. And I had to pause when I said it was in Chesterland, Ohio, because, it's on County Line Road, the address. And we used to say Gates Mills, but I think the actual physical address is in Chesterland, Ohio. But it's a great, big, beautiful campus. And I was there recently in January. Didn't recognize anything on campus except the White House, where we ate lunch. It was kind of neat when you're a high schooler from 78th and Kinsman and you're eating lunch in a mansion, at school.
When I say this, and I'm saying this very seriously and as a compliment, see, you have a compelling story. And you went to Hawkins, which is an outstanding college preparatory school, and predominantly a white school. And I can't tell you the difficulties or if you encountered any there. I'm a proud graduate of Benedictine when we weren't supposed to be there. I had an opportunity to go to Hawkins, but my parents said we can't afford that. So when I heard you, you said, well, first class of female graduates, and I had some friends who actually graduated from Hawkins. One was Myron Taylor, he graduated in 74, and Gregory Battle of the Battle Juice family, he graduated in 73, and another friend of mine, Alvin Robinson, who's now passed on, he also graduated in 73. And we would get together, not more so Alvin, Myron, and myself, and we would talk about the challenges of being in these predominantly white schools, because coming from Mount Pleasant to Lee Harbor, we didn't encounter that. And now we're thrust into this. Now, academically, with no question, you prevailed. All of them prevailed. Both of them prevailed, the three of them. And so did I. And I think what's important, especially when you're on this show, and I don't know if I mentioned it to you, this is audio and video, so people will get to see you. What's important is we need to understand from a historical perspective, history, we can succeed at anything.
I believe that is true. And I will tell you, I didn't necessarily doubt my ability to succeed when I went to Hawkins, because I'd always been good at taking tests. So there was an admissions test, and I did well on that. And I had always had amazing teachers. All of them through elementary school, African American women, who always expected the best from the students. This is Anton Gradina Elementary School, where I started at 77th and Trenton. And it was a new brick building right next to the new brick public housing units. And Garden Valley was an interesting planned community. There were houses. We were in one of those frame houses, 3-bedroom house on East 78th Street, and right at the end, I think that might have been Trenton. At the end, then we walked down to Anton Gradina, but I'm understanding that it was really an effort to see if private homeowners would remain in a community where, we had this obvious influx of working class and working poor people who were living in public housing. And to a certain extent, I think the experiment succeeded. I didn't see anybody necessarily running away from 78th Street because their neighbors lived in brick apartment buildings. But in any case, I think I had a happy childhood. But in the 4th grade, I left Anton Gradina and went to Mount Pleasant, A.J. Rickoff, at 147th and Kinsman.
I went there too.
Wonderful school.
Were you there with Mrs. Fox?
Of course.
Okay, well, go on and finish your...
And Mrs. Beatrice Fox, great educator and former member of the Mount Zion Congregational Church. I found out I saw a painting of her hanging at Mount Zion Congregational
From
Church.
my understanding, Mrs. Fox was the first black principal in the Cleveland Public School District or system.
I'm guessing one of the first. There's a great study by Russell Davis, Black Americans in Cleveland, Ohio, And we just can't get away from that book because he did a very good job. I think it was published in 1976. But it has a picture and also a life story of Mrs. Hazel Mountain Walker. And she was one of the first administrators as well. So I don't know exactly when the two of them started, but she is the one who's given credit for naming this playhouse Kiramu House.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, and so I can't say that Mrs. Beatrice Fox was the first, but certainly one of the first and highly respected educators of the city of Cleveland. I just don't know her stats.
And that's fine. You're listening to the Body Talk Radio program on No Static Radio Network. See, what's interesting, I grew up, my early life was on 147th between Barlett and Hampstead.
Wow.
And Luke Easter lived across the street. I attended A.J. Rickall, then moved on, make it sound like I purchased a house from my parents in Lee Harvard. Moved on to Gracemont, and then to Elliott. And not saying the school system has dramatically changed, but in essence it has. Then Elliott, and was tested by Exeter Academy. And he said, I'm going to talk to your parents. And I was supposed to be going to Exeter Academy, but back then, about $2,700 was a lot of money. And I remember when he sat there and said, well, if you go to Exeter, you're guaranteed to enter any Ivy League school, any Ivy League college. And I'm thinking I'll be the next John F. Kennedy. But one thing that is interesting here and about you, when did you get this love or drive to study history?
It had been there for a very long time. In sitting through that interview, it was a telephone interview with someone from the alumni office at Hawkins School, I had to think about some of the research I did in high school. And I remember in the 1970s, I was looking at the works of Booker T. Washington and William Edward Burghardt Du Bois and the so-called Du Bois-Washington controversy. Should we, as Mr. Washington suggested, go to industrial and normal schools and learn skills and get a trade, maybe start our own businesses? Or should we embrace the arts and humanities and go to a FISC, a liberal arts college in Nashville? You know, also historically black, just like Hampton and just like Tuskegee, that Mr. Washington was the first principal, founding principal of. Which one should it be? You know, the liberal arts, or, you know, sort of the trade school or the normal school? To be a teacher. Nothing wrong with that. Well, I was more attracted at the time to the souls of black folk and what Dr. Du Bois had to say, because, you know, he was one of those people, the first black, right? I know his stats, right? And all these great honors that he achieved over his 95 years of life, 1868 to 1963, it was about 95 years before he left here. But again, the first black to earn a PhD at Harvard.
That's right.
And that's when most white people in the country weren't graduating from high school, but he gets this PhD. And he was such a stellar student, you know, even graduating as valedictorian of his high school in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. So he was used to competing with other people regardless of race and winning all the time. You know, he was almost obsessed with winning, and he was determined to win, you know, this great debate, if you will, public debate about the kind of education that black people were best suited for. But he said something really interesting that now bothers me, but it didn't bother me in the 70s. He talked about a talented 10. So there's a certain percentage of black people, you know, the best, who would be the leaders of the race, and they would save the rest of society from the worst. And so there's a classism there. Sometimes I hear some color prejudice if I listen carefully to what Du Bois is saying. But at the time, liberal arts education seemed like it was the way to go, because it's there where you're going to get the humanities, you know, and the foreign languages and the things that I loved when I was in high school.
You're listening to the Body Talk Radio program. We have Dr. Regina Williams, who is from the Western Reserve Historical Society. That's one of the things that, and I'm going to ask this question now before I forget. When are you working on your book now?
I am working on a research paper, which I am so excited about. And it's, and you plan public programs because those are important too, and conduct oral histories because that's scholarship too. But we are looking at healthcare in Glenville, and especially the history of the Fort City Hospital, and why in the 1950s, when folks like the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and also Pastor Downs, they're looking for opportunities to move into spaces, if you will, throughout the society that had formerly been dominated by or exclusively controlled by white people. And then you get a group of Black physicians who suggest that we need to build a hospital in Glenville. They weren't calling it a Negro hospital, but a lot of integrationists were, and they didn't want a Jim Crow hospital. And so it was really a tough sell to convince people that Black doctors needed full admitting privileges. If they have a private practice and they're caring for their patients, are they supposed to turn those patients over to doctors that don't even know them? Just because Black doctors don't have admitting privileges in a lot of the mainstream hospitals, most of them in the city of Cleveland. The people who oppose it, including Black people in the NAACP in Cleveland, suggest that there are enough hospitals in the city without building a separate one for Black people, primarily in Glenville. Why can't Black doctors get admitting privileges at the other hospital? Good question. They've been trying to do that for a very long time, and it hasn't happened, and it's costing their Black patients their lives. And so, but we get a hospital with an integrated staff where the Black physicians have the full admitting privileges, just like the other doctors and nurses on staff. And that is the Forest City Hospital in Glenville in 1957. Same year as the Little Rock school desegregation effort. So again, to their credit, Black doctors are activists in their own right, just like those individuals who are fighting for voting rights, and housing rights, and equal employment opportunities in other categories of labor.
See, it's interesting that you mentioned the admitting privileges and the drive to create a Forest City. If you look across the country, and I don't know the exact time frame, other Black hospitals, such as the Howard University Hospital, I'm not drawing a blank on the name of the hospital that's on the Meharry campus, used to be a Black hospital. Now it belongs to the county now. If you even go to Drew out in LA, most of those hospitals were created to give those admitting privileges to physicians so they could follow their patients. Now we're dating ourselves. I'm only 27, so you have to be 22.
At least.
See, that's when physicians actually would come to your house. Indemnity insurance, no such thing as managed care. The big hospital enterprise systems gobbled up everything, and the resources financially just weren't there anymore. And I think, and again, I'm deferring to you because you're the historian. History's cycling. Mm-hmm. It always comes back around. I might not see it or might not understand it because I don't know about it, but the things that are occurring today actually happen, not everything. Certain things happen 40, 50, 60 years ago, even 100 years ago. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I think one of the paradigms, especially because of the health disparity issue, we need our own facility. We should also be encouraging our youngsters, our babies, not when they enter senior high school. We should start in the 8th grade, encouraging our children to become health practitioners, nurses, physicians, dentists, researchers, and so forth and so on. I was at Meharry. I was associate dean in Shameless Club. And one of the things that struck me when I was recruited to go there was I had never worked in a predominantly African American environment. I said, well, I have all this great knowledge, I can give it back, which I did. And what struck me though, all of a sudden you saw the shift that you primary. So they became the minority, and the Meharry of the world and other schools such as even Morehouse, they were created for us. And I'm not saying to exclude anybody, but they were created for us so we could go into primary care and our specialty residencies or whatever. But now you see more Europeans working campus than you see us.
Yeah, this integration has been an interesting thing. Something that people like Zora Neale Hurston really feared in the 1950s, that when you begin to tell Black children that the best opportunities for them are in those schools where they can sit next to white students, but what are you really saying about Black teachers and Black administrators in those historically Black institutions, and their ability to inspire students to achieve at any level? So she opposed desegregation or integration in the 1950s. But she was sort of the type of person who got sidelined, because there was a mainstream movement that said we need to open up the society and do away with the Jim Crow institutions because we belong in the mainstream. Our experiences are American experiences.
And I agree with you. And I'm going to ask you from a historical perspective, what's happening or what happened to our public school systems in the urban environment? That's code speak for Black and brown. It's like they just disintegrated. Our children aren't learning anything. The reading level is way low or too low from what should be acceptable.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of things that have happened, and I don't blame the schools. I think there are things that have happened in our society. If we look at the jobs that were available to men like my father, a veteran of the Korean conflict, served his country, came here as part of that great migration in the 1950s, met and married his true love, my mother. Turns out they were both from Arkansas, living on the east side of Cleveland. And then they put down roots here, started a family here. He was a selector in the warehouse of the A&P grocery store. He had never graduated from high school, but he could own his own home. Get it financed by a Black bank in Cleveland. Buy a car every 4 or 5 years. Take 3 weeks paid vacation every year. Go back home to Arkansas. Visit his mother and the other relatives who did not migrate. Go to Illinois, where a lot of my mother's relatives had migrated. Come through Indiana, where my father had 3 brothers, and then come home to Cleveland, to his little frame house, right, that he had paid for in his lifetime, right? Didn't live to be 50, but to pay for a house before he turned 50. Those jobs, in the year, I believe that my father died, it would have been 1978, A&P is closing up shop in Northeast Ohio. There are other grocery stores, but all of those men who had all of those benefits, including the really generous life insurance policies, that my mother was able to benefit from in the wake of my father's passing. He had 6 dependent kids when he left here. Those kinds of jobs are gone. Now, many of them went to the industrial parks in Sullivan, but there's an out-migration of people and of jobs and other opportunities between the 1970s, and the present day. And when all of that happens, and then we're losing real estate. I mean, houses are just gone. Those properties that existed in the community that is now owned by Cleveland Clinic, they're gone. And so are a lot of the churches. East Mount Zion has stood its ground, right?
They're an anomaly. They really are.
Since 1955. And so when you lose those kinds of properties where the real estate taxes would benefit the schools, then the schools are losing resources. And again, here's prosperity for you. When people have the opportunity to move up and out, yeah, they should be able to do that. If there are more opportunities in Mount Pleasant than there are in Cedar Central community, why wouldn't parents move on, to claim some of those opportunities for themselves and for the children and get transfers to another good school in Cleveland? But like, I think that's part of it. And now we have people who have been left behind. I think it's fair to say many hardworking people, many people who want the best for their children, who don't have the option of getting a union job at an institution like A&B grocery store.
Or even the post office.
Yes,
Or
and yeah,
the steel mills or the auto
yes.
plants, they're gone.
Thank you for saying the steel mills. Yes, and so again, and a lot of, and they haven't just gone to the suburban industrial parks; they've gone to other countries.
They're overseas.
And Mr. Coffee went to Mexico, I think, when it left here. But you know, those jobs are gone, and so people need opportunities.
Well, you're the researcher. See, I think there's a definite tie between the success of a public school system and the reduction of poverty. Poverty is always going to be around, and I'm not saying this is what it is in Cleveland. You shouldn't have a 80% poverty rate in the city. People, if you're just in whatever middle income means now across the country, more so in Cleveland, if you don't acquire the appropriate education upon graduation to even enter the workforce, or if you have a desire to go to a technical school or a 4-year college and maybe on to graduate school and on to a doctorate program, that's not there. So you have this collection of people, I'm going to use your term, people who are left behind, and they can't get out. Now, I'm not opposed to an increase in minimum wage. When I had my first job, I was making $1.85 an hour. As a kid, is $15 an hour sound like a lot of money to $1.85? Yes, it does, but that's not going to lift me out of poverty. Without an education, and bad term here, you're stuck. You're stuck. And there are some very bright kids in public school, but their parents can't afford to send them to Hawken, a University of Gilmore, or wherever, Benedictine parochial school. So it almost seemed like it was done on purpose.
Yes, and you know the interesting thing about some of the examples for the institutions that you named, I'm one of 6 children. I was the only one who went to a private school, but I think all of my siblings did well because the world was just different in the 1970s. For example, my father worked very hard, and so did my mother, but they were blue-collar workers.
Yeah.
She could only work part-time, right, after all the kids were in school because she had a job at home. She had 6 kids, right? And my father was that kind of guy, you know, who wanted to be not the primary breadwinner. You wanted to be the, well, why do you need a job? You know, so they had this discussion. I'm glad I heard that because it still makes me smile. You have to justify wanting to do something other than be the mother of 6 kids that he thought were pretty amazing. Right?
It's the 70s. You and I are close in age. See, the 70s era, and I'm going to say that probably was the last great era. And I'm not saying we're better than anybody else. I think our parents understood, Mom, wife, you got to stay at home with the 6 or the 3 or the 2. I don't want latchkey kids. We're going to make it on the salary I have. Yeah, we might go out to eat at Manners and everybody will get a bite of the hamburger or whatever. That doesn't exist today, and I think, I'm generalizing, of course, you don't really have parents anymore. You have some people, and let me qualify, you have some people who want to be friends with their children. And my parents, just like yours, blue collar, my father was a postal worker, but he made it clear, I'll give you everything you need. I'm not going to give you anything you want. He said, when you leave here and you start working, you can meet your own wants. And when we graduated, I was the only one who attended a private school, but when we graduated from high school, you had 3 choices. You could go to the military, you could go get a job, or you can go to college. But he made it quite clear, don't waste my money. And I think the choices are still there to a degree, but with the technological They might be computer wizards by playing Xbox or whatever, but they don't have the logical thinking skills like you and I developed in school. The public schools in the 70s, those are great schools. Those were great schools. It was an anomaly. It was rare. If we had a graduating class, I had friends who went to Kennedy, they had 607 kids that graduated in 1974. It was rare if 3 people didn't graduate.
Yes, I agree. My sister, well, 2 of my sisters and my brother, they graduated from East Tech.
Okay.
The classes were huge in the 70s, but the world has changed. And it's not just the union jobs that were blue collar jobs, and there were a lot of college educated people working at the post office. They were doing quite well, but crack cocaine, and I know there was heroin.
Correct.
An earlier point in the 20th century, but what crack cocaine did to many of the cities in America, and especially in those areas where Black people were living, I don't know how long it's going to take for us to recover from that. I think most parents do the best that they can, but very often the resources are not there for them to do what they need to do. I had students, for example, who were parents when I was teaching at Cleveland State, where I taught in the history department for 23 years. Some of these students would have 2, 3 part-time jobs, and they're trying to juggle childcare. Some of them are taking care of their parents. When I taught at DC, I had a student who was just sharp. She was taking care of her grandmother. At University of the District of Columbia Community College, right there on North Capitol. I saw the Capitol Dome every day.
You were at UDC? Was
Yes.
Ray Berry the mayor then?
No, this was after Marion Barry, but it was still his city.
Yeah, Sharon Pratt Dixon probably.
It was still his city, but it was, it was Washington. It was the federal city, and Black people knew it. It wasn't like the chocolate city anymore, but because gentrification was right there in the Shaw Howard community. You talked about Howard University, but Howard was still the Mecca. And oh boy, didn't the students know it when they strutted down Georgia Avenue. But again, the sense of community that we had in some neighborhoods in Cleveland, it doesn't necessarily exist. I think busing didn't cause the outmigration of population. I think opportunities. People, there was the pull, right? There was the attraction of having maybe a ranch home in Bedford Heights on a larger lot. Maybe you wanted that. You weren't necessarily going to get it on 78th Street. Not that you were running away from Kinsman, but maybe you wanted that. Okay, you can go if you had the resources.
And I understand, times have changed. And I think that everything you said, I truly agree with. And we have some things in common. I actually taught at Howard when Dr. Chi was there. But see, one of the things that, we have Dr. Williams from the Western Reserve Historical Society with us today. And before we wrap up, see, I think what's important here is when you mentioned busing, I think busing actually helped destroy public education because you lost the community-based schools. You have children coming from all over the city. The poor kid from Lee Harvard had to go to John Marshall. The kid from John Marshall might not have come to Lee Harvard. His parents had the resources to send he or she to the parochial school, so maybe to the Hawkins Gilmers or whatever they were. And that was done under Judge Battisti. When Judge White became the chief judge, the first order he did, he eliminated busing in Cleveland.
Yeah, but there's something I want to say because I rode buses from the 4th grade through the 12th grade. And I want to say something in defense of busing and the parents who choose to encourage their child to get on the bus with the understanding that at the end of that bus ride, you go into that classroom and you learn all that you can and become the best person that you can be and bring it back home to your neighborhood. work through those math problems with your parents, and there'll be some learning going on together. But, and so my mother didn't say when I was in the fourth grade, what am I, 8 or 9 years old, riding a bus? Little paper bus tickets from 78th and Kinsman to 147th and Kinsman. It's only one bus, but still it's a long bus ride. And I'm going from a poor / working class neighborhood to a middle class black neighborhood that saw me as some kind of ghetto child. There were always middle class and upper class black people reminding me, usually the middle class ones and the lower middle class ones at that, of how poor I was. I remember this one young man when I rode the school bus, a very long way, after catching a bus to Hillside and 79th Street and taking the Shaker Rapid to Shaker and Lee and getting on the Hawkins school bus and going to County Line Road in Chesterland, Ohio. I've got this friend who lives in the John Adams community who's joking on the school bus about me living on Project Avenue because I'm so poor. No, we've got a nice little White House, a frame house with picket fence, garden in the back, lawn that gets mowed in the summer, snow that gets shoveled in the winter. But he just had this attitude that I was somehow less than him because I rode from a different neighborhood to get to Hawkins. So I say that to say this, it's not that students are on the bus. It's what's waiting for them at the end of the bus ride. That's why my parents work with me, to keep me at Hawkins and to let me know that if there were opportunities there that weren't necessarily in Cleveland, I had every right to try to access those.
Dr. Williams, I wholeheartedly agree. It's not the ride, because I rode the bus, and most of the time I walked.
Okay.
Because the 13 seem to run once every 6 years. That's the bus that runs down, up and down Buckeye. It's what's at the end. And, racism exists. I'm not going to say it doesn't. But I think what you make of the situation you're in, and you grab that knowledge, and I'll defend Benedictine from now till I turn 90, and I'm not Catholic. It was a great education. It was fantastic. I was accepted at so many colleges. I could win anywhere. But what I miss was the socialization piece. Okay, now, granted, I had friends who were at Kennedy and Adams, and that's great, but it's not the same thing at Benedictine. I don't want to call them friends. Some of those kids lived out in Newberry. They weren't coming to my house on Saturday. My parents weren't taking me out to Newberry. Okay? But I agree with this. What you do when you get off the bus, learn as much as you can. I'm not saying, I was called some very terrible names. I'm not going to repeat on the air. But I overcame it. Okay? And what I really want to do, I'm going to have you come back so you can spend 2 hours here. No, really, because I think
it sounds like we need to co-author a book. You're asking me if I'm writing my book, but I've written a number of things over the years. But you gotta pick and choose what you want to focus on. And this is something that I think the Reverend Dr. Brian A. Cash understands much better than I do. And he broke it down this way, that so much of our history is going to the grave with those individuals in the black churches who have made the history and built the churches, and they take their stories to the grave with them. So I'm happy to be focusing on oral history right now and the scholarship associated with that. But I want to write that chapter first. This is a peer-reviewed paper, right? That's the one that gets you tenure, right?
Well, and
you know that as the associate dean.
Wish you well. See, one of the things that's important to me, you mentioned the book. I've been working on one called Anthology of the Black Man Untold Story. And I've encountered some outstanding black men, and even as a civilian, and even in the military, I had an opportunity. My mentor, one of them, was a gentleman by the name of General Peterson. He was the first black pilot in the Marine Corps. He rose up to become 3 stars. And I would go down to Quantico. They would send me to Quantico. That was one of my commands I was responsible for. And if I was in trouble, go see Frank. And I had to drive from Bethesda, sometimes the Pentagon, to go see Frank. And I'll tell the story in a moment. wrap up. I was tapped to be the inaugural speaker for the Martin Luther King celebration. And by this point in time in my military career, I was happy, but I was not happy. Okay. And I told the admiral, I said, well, I'm going to take leave. I'm going to come in a suit. He said, go see Frank. Went to go see Frank. And he said, have you seen the guest list? I said, no, sir. Press the button. A comes in. Go get the guest list. He gives me a copy. He said, look at the guest list. All the Joint Chiefs, everybody who had at least 4 or 3 stars in D.C. area. Some people were coming from out of the area. Secretary of Defense, Undersecretary of Defense, his wife, his mother, and everybody else. And Vice President Bush. And he said, wear the uniform. He said, you're smart enough to say certain things. Just say certain things the right way. Day comes. I go up on stage. I look out. And here's my mother and father sitting next to General Peterson. It's interesting. I do my thing. We had a VIP reception. And General Peterson, I said, how did my parents get here? He said, I flew them in. I had them stay at Quantico with me. We drove up. And I said, you didn't tell me. He said, I had to have them here so you wouldn't act up. But that's why I've been working on this text. And there's women in it too. And, from Colin Powell to whoever that I had a chance to really sit down and talk to. I think one of the greatest honors I ever had was when I sat down and talked to David Marshall. And I just said, I need to know your story about, how you did this in the South. But that's enough about me. We have had Dr. Williams, one of the super directors at the Western Reserve.
So you're going to get me in trouble if you call me a director. Because there's one director, or there's a historian.
A historian.
Scholar.
And see, and if I almost they do this quick. See, one of the things that surprised, well, I'm not surprised. Certain people are trying to suppress our history. It's like we didn't exist. And you're more the historian than I am, okay? And I don't want to speak for you. If I was, and it does bother me, we can't mention certain names. They want to take certain books out of libraries and not read them in schools.
I heard what you said earlier about the cycles of history.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's literature that's older than any of the books, or among the oldest books that I have access to at home. There's nothing new under the sun. And those things, vanity, all of it's vanity. Nothing is new. This is Old Testament literature. And so we should not be surprised that there are people who would silence the voices of those black and white, or regardless of race, who would teach all of African American history, all of the diverse histories that contribute to the nation's history. And so we just have to continue to do what Du Bois and Washington did in the 19th century, when there were no schools, to build schools. When we couldn't get into certain universities to have normal schools on the campuses of black colleges, we've always had to do that. To have Sabbath schools, at the churches, in the evening, after people get through working in the cotton field, they go to a Sabbath school at the church. And so we've always had to do those things, and just to do our best and not to take anything for granted.
I would like to thank Dr. Williams, and I'm going to create a title for her. She's the super black historian at the Western Reserve Historical Society. And to all the listeners, and more so for me, thank you. And I am going to have you come back, and I'm going to give you full 2 hours so that you can share. Just sitting here with you is like being in a history class.
Oh, well, thank you.
And
tell all your friends so they sign up for history class.
Are you still teaching? You still teach?
Well, I would like very much to teach a course at Kent State University in the upcoming academic year. Not sure that it can happen for fall because it's a new course. And students need time to buy books, and, and I need time to write lectures. But we have a new memo of understanding with Kent State University that's one of the things that several of the PhDs at the Historical Society have the option of doing. And I have an idea for a course.
Okay. congratulations.
Thank you
Again,
so
thank
much.
you, Dr. Williams, for being a guest, and we have to arrange for you to come back. Thank you to all the listeners for tuning in to the Body Talk radio program on the No Static Network. And again, thank you, and I will see you next week when we have our power panel. I think you're going to be very, very impressed with the 4 panelists, and one of the topics is social justice. And again, thank you. My name is Ayl Bridges, and see you next week.
That was so cool. Are we up here? Oh. Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
I'm sorry for messing up the ending.
And I'll send you the link.
Do you edit that at all?
No?
Yes.
Oh, well, please
I
take
might the video part, which I need to get.
Oh, well, don't forget to take that end off. I'm going to say, are we off the air?
I got you.
And I heard it in the microphone. Coming right back at you. But this is so amazing.
Thank
I didn't
you.
even know this was down here.
And I mean it seriously. When I say
And this is amazing.
one of the things
I'm going to go ahead and talk. I mean, let's get at that. Look, you know what?
I'd like to thank you for tuning in to Body Talk, a program for your body, mind, and soul. Here at a station where we don't bring no static, but we sure enough bring the noise on staticradio.net. Make sure you guys check us out on social media where we absolutely love to hear from you on Facebook.com/No Static Radio LLC, on Twitter at No Static _ radio, on Instagram at the real _ No Static Radio, and on YouTube at No Static Radio. Also, if you guys would like to listen to replays of this show and others on NoStaticRadio.net, please make sure you check us out on Mixler or Mixcloud.com. Just type in No Static Radio, all one word, in the toolbar for replays of this show and others. And for continuous streaming, that means no refreshing the page. Just sit back, relax, and let your show pop up. And bam, you got us on TuneIn.com, live on LiveRadio.net, or MediaQ for continuous streaming of this show and all others on the platform. And for all things No Static Radio, including up and coming events, merchandise, and an in-depth look at all our great show hosts here, please check out our website at www.nostaticradio.net. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and stay tuned. We got more music coming up. And later on this evening, tune in to today's gospel music show with your host, the Reverend Doctor. Here are your voice of the revolution on staticradio.net. Powered by Google, partner with Colors, and sponsored by Lamont Avenue Wines and Hot Girls Gear. You guys have a good one. Don't forget to stay tuned. We got more music coming up, and we'll see you later. Peace. Sorry, I don't know how to answer.
listening to her.